Hello everyone, this is Ashley Tucker. Thank you for joining me today. For today's card, I started with a piece of Canson watercolor paper taped to a board. I feel like every video starts this way now. I've been doing a lot of watercoloring lately. For today's card, I will be using watercolors eventually, but I actually started out by using some distress ink. It's been a long time since I've pulled out my distress inks. My go-to ink lately has been the Distress Oxide inks, but for this particular piece, I really wanted those bright colors that you can get with the distress inks. Now you can get bright colors with Distress Oxide inks, but the ink is a lot more chalky looking, and so that's not really the look that I wanted for this particular card. And plus I haven't used these in so long, I just really wanted to pull them out and play with them. The colors that I'm using here are Mustard Seed, Peacock Feathers, Seedless Preserves, and Dusty Concord. For this particular piece, I wasn't focusing too much on the blends between colors. I don't mind if it looks messy. What I was really focusing on was getting some really good color down. This piece is actually going to be a galaxy, and when you do a galaxy background, it's okay if your colors are really messy because most of it's going to get covered anyways. Once I got all of that ink laid down, I took some water and a paintbrush and I just tapped some water droplets onto the paper. I let it sit for a minute or two, and then I took a paper towel and soaked it up, and it pulls some of that ink up with it. Next, I pulled out my Gansai Tambi watercolors, and I used this really pretty white shimmery color. It's kind of like a pearl color, and I just tapped little droplets of that onto the paper. At this point, I thought that this piece looked nice and I could definitely keep working on it the way that I normally do galaxies, but I thought I'd try something different. So I took my paintbrush and I just added clean water and I used some circular brush strokes and kind of like blended all of that beautiful distress ink out. And I really loved the way that this was looking. And it's really hard to see this in the video, but because I added those splatters of the shimmery white paint, all of these areas are now shimmery. So I really liked that while I was doing it, but once it dried, all of the color got too dull for my liking. So I added some color back in with my Gansai Tambi watercolors. You might notice that this piece was a lot of experimenting and honestly just a lot of me playing around and having fun. I didn't really have a whole lot of plan when I went into this, and it was mostly just trying things and seeing how they went. So anyways, I brightened up the yellow areas and I really liked the way that that came out. But when I tried to brighten up the blue areas, I didn't like it as much. So I just added some purple along the sides to kind of hide those lines that formed. And then I moved on to adding some more splatters. I think that the most important thing to keep in mind if you're doing a galaxy background is that they're very forgiving. They can look like a total disaster the whole time that you're doing them. And then when you add the black and the stars, magic happens and you're like, I don't know how this looks so amazing, but I'll take it. So right here I'm adding in some black paint. This is just the black watercolor paint from the Gansai Tambi set, and I'm just dabbing it in randomly anywhere with really messy dabs. And if you'd rather use black soot distress ink to do this part, you could totally do that. There are so many different ways to do galaxy backgrounds, and I hardly ever stick to one way. I always mix them and do different things every time. Once my black paint was dry, I added a whole bunch more stars with some of the white paint. Now you might have thought that I was done, but no, I wasn't. There's still more steps to this. I took out my distress ink again and I went over some of those areas to really deepen that color back up because it had kind of faded a little bit and I wanted it to be more vibrant. Finally, the very last thing that I did for this galaxy background is I added even more stars because pretty much every time that I add something, I add more stars. Galaxy backgrounds are all about layers. I really wish that I could show you this background in real life because that little hint of a shimmer on it is just so pretty. Okay, now that that background is done, I know it took a really long time. Now we're going to move on to the sentiment. I pulled out this die which says hello, and it cuts that hello across the top of a panel. This is a Spellbinders die that I actually got in one of their small die of the month kits from a few months ago. I placed this die along the very bottom edge of that galaxy background, but I'm actually going to change the placement of it later. I used my ATG gun to adhere that panel onto a card base. Next, I took out my white gel pen and I added some dashed lines to the galaxy background. Once I finished those dash lines, I realized that I wanted that sentiment panel to be in a different position. So I actually ended up having to die cut it again because I wanted the panel that it was on to be longer. I placed my new sentiment panel onto the card, and then I used my scissors to trim off all of the excess. I added a bunch of different sequins and half pearls all across the galaxy portion of the card. I used glossy accents to adhere all of these, mostly because I'm out of my Tombow glue right now and I just need to pick up some more. I wanted to add another sentiment to this card to go along with that hello, so I took out this Friends stamp set from Hero Arts and I'm going to use the stamp which says Amazing Friend. So in the end, my whole sentiment is going to say, Hello, Amazing Friend. I used my Misty tool to stamp this sentiment in some Versamark ink so that I could heat emboss it in a white embossing powder. I used foam tape to pop up this strip right below that hello sentiment. For one final touch, I used my Wink of Stella glitter brush and I added some glitter to that sentiment strip. And then this card is all done. Thank you for watching today. I hope you really enjoyed this galaxy card design. All of the supplies that I used for this video can be found in the description down below. If you enjoyed watching and you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, I would encourage you to hit that subscribe button so that you can see all of my future videos. I'm going to be back with a new video on Friday. Again, thank you for watching. I really appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a great day today.